PGA Nation, we are back coming off the USA bringing in a gold medal, and we have to pass the gold medal on this show off outside of the USA. Congratulations, David, on a big draft victory last week. It was a fun Olympics tournament, but we move on this week to the the Wyndham Championship in North Carolina. I'm excited to break it down with you. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, look, just a reminder to the people watching this show, not only are you getting great DFS content, but the first round leader plays have been on absolute fire. Joel and myself both gave out Hideki Matsuyama to be first round leader at the Olympics in Paris, which he duly delivered, cash to 33-1 for us on that. And I only gave 3 out. They were Hideki, who was first, Tom Kim, who was third, and Sepp Striker, who was sixth. So very, very good first round from all of those guys. And always pleasing to get that runner-up spot off that monkey off my back and get a victory, despite Matthew Fitzpatrick withdrawing in the final round. Had a number of guys who were right there in contention. I should also add for the audience that in case you don't know, if you were completely oblivious to the news, that there is a rather large storm moving across the East Coast where Joel is located, as well as this tournament this week. So we might see Joel jump in and out. We're going to have to just play it a little bit by ear. He may withdraw several times. This tournament might be reduced to 54 holes given the amount of rain. Certainly, I think it's going to be at least a Monday finish. Spence, you done any research on old Hurricane Debbie and what influence that might have this week?
Well, yes, I will say with Joel being frozen in the background, when I was noticing this before he had gotten frozen, and I kind of wish it would have happened. If he scoots back, it almost looks like he's behind like prison cells with all of the lighting that's taking place with it, with the reflection. But I don't know if that's like Joel putting himself in prison here to not get withdrawn from the show or whatever is happening. But I think you said it best, David. It's a tournament this week where weather is going to play a significant factor. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, whether that ends up being a 54-hole tournament, a Monday finish, there are some unknown variables that are going to take place. I still like the betting card. I've given this answer quite a few times, and some of it is good and some of it is bad. When you get these events where there is a lot of rollover predictability. Welcome back, Joel. When there's a lot of rollover predictability, though, that takes place, the data starts pointing you in the same direction as a lot of other people. So, we can talk about how we're going to get different naturally on this show. Lineups are going to have to be different because you're not going to get every single person that you want just because once a name is gone, you're not going to be able to land that player. But very easy to decipher course statistically. Very hard to project with the weather coming into play.
Well, I'll add on. Well, one, I'll apologize. This is probably going to be a bad show for me tonight. I'm going to be in and out. My power is flickering. So apologies in advance. But one thing I wanted to just tee up before we move on fully into this week is, I took a pretty bold strategy on the show last week with taking Scheffler and Xander and then trying to fill it in from there. Scheffler won the tournament. So, you would think, all right, well, that should work out, and I still didn't win, right? So in an event where there is no cut, I was guaranteed 6 days. I had the winner. I think what that shows you, though, more than anything, is when they price Scheffler up, and even though he's going to have a great result, sometimes it's just too hard to win with that price because you can't play. If you got to play some of these guys in a very low 6K range, they can only do so much. And sometimes it's better. It might be better to get 5 guys in the top 15 than to have the winner and then scramble the rest of your roster. So it's not the same every week, but I think there's a learning we can take from what we did last week. But let's get into the Wyndham Championship. Move on to this week. Historically, Spence can tell you better than anyone. This used to be basically Webb Simpson's tournament. One of his kids, I'm pretty sure, is named after this tournament. Yeah. So the issue now is Webb Simpson. I'm sorry, Spence. I don't think you'll take offense to this. He is completely over there. He's done. I can't even if there was any time to ever consider playing it. Obviously, it would be here, but at this point, I just can't put anything behind him. I haven't seen any result or any form that seems like he'd be worth putting anything behind. But with that being said, Spence, I'd love to get your course breakdown, what you're looking for this week, even knowing there's a pretty big storm coming.
Just to touch on the Webb Simpson discussion very quickly, we don't need to spend a lot of time on him. I've already talked about him for like 3 hours combined on all the shows. What ends up happening when you get this is the Webb Simpson Championship. Like, you can joke about it, Joel, but because everybody knows that's the answer, while there's really no reason to play him outside of course history, I'm seeing like 8% ownership right now. People are trying to find a way to fit him into builds. And, I'll give this comment here. I gave it over in the Rotoballer Discord. I haven't necessarily seen any matchups, and I gave this answer to Ed when we were having this discussion. I'm not going to ever admit I said this. If you were to say I said it, this did not come out of my mouth. I thought Webb was a really intriguing person to try to take on in the head-to-head market. Unfortunately, we haven't necessarily gotten any of those opportunities so far this week. We'll see what ends up happening, but that's my 2 cents on the Webb Simpson discussion here. You look at this course, I'm going to avoid the weather for a second. We've already talked about it. We know that there's a potential that this is either 54 holes, a Monday finish. All of that's going to come into play. What are the most noteworthy marks that we need to at least look at here? Donald Ross design. Chris Spence remodeled it in 2007 to toughen the property. It's going to be a relatively straightforward expectation when we examine the data. Players have delivered a winning score of just under 20 under par over the past 5 iterations. That shows the general ease that the property has at its core. However, the most significant return, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier on, is it's one of the 12 most predictable venues on tour yearly for rollover performance. So I think the question that you have to ask yourself based off of that is, how much is the weather going to affect it? And if it does affect the tournament, where does it affect? We look at this venue, 8 par 4 holes that stretch between 400 to 450 yards. 83% of the approach shots occur from 125 plus yards. You get an 8% increase from 125 to 175 versus a standard stop on tour. I don't know. It's always the tough thing with weather, because weather is the great equalizer, and weather is the answer that you don't always have all the pieces put into place. You can get into a position to where Jon Rahm is one of the best plays on the board at the Open Championship. He ends up on the wrong side of the draw, and while he comes in 7th place, it ends up hurting his high-end results. Although with somebody who had a Jon Rahm ticket last week, I'm not so sure we even get a 7th place finish from him if he has the lead on Sunday there. I don't know what the hell that was from Rahm. Like, I kind of gave this answer whether this is right or wrong. You leave for a tour and you take a lot of money from LIV. You haven't necessarily had those competitive rounds, PGA Tour rounds in some of these spots. We can say LIV is what it is. It's a 54-hole tournament. You add an extra 18 holes there. I'm not surprised that Rahm technically did what he did in that spot, but if we look specifically for this venue here, it's going to be putters on Bermuda, players that can find fairways. I think that could even be a little more of an emphasis there, just because I would assume it's going to be lift clean in place. So the ability to find fairways is going to have an extra weight in my model than it normally would.
I think it's a really good point. I'll add to your Rahm point. There is something to be said about playing on tour, and it's a constant grind. A mental grind. You're constantly competing against the top players on tour. There's 4 days. You're always kind of striving to get to the more FedEx points, get to that next point in the season. And LIV is just different. And again, these guys are still best golfers in the world, but they're not going through the same grind. They're playing team events. You could be, you could have your teammate being in first place and almost carrying you, and maybe your individual result not matter quite as much. It's just a different feel. Again, it's 3 days, like you mentioned. So I think he lost some of that mental 4-day grind that he was, excellent at, the previous years on the PGA Tour. And that, I think, is showed up, maybe in some of the majors. It showed up at the Olympics. But, I'm a pretty firm believer. It's a matter of time until we see the old Jon Rahm we know and love back. He's too good a golfer not to. Without further ado, we do have a draft tonight, and I am excited to break it down. David, congrats on the win last week. You got to select the draft order as we pull the draft board up tonight. As a reminder, if you want to follow along or if you're new to the show, log into YouTube. you can draft along with the rest of the chat. The way it works is like your typical fantasy football draft. It's snake style, 1 through 4. Tonight's order will go myself, David, Spencer, and then audience. Audience, you'll get 2, and then we'll wrap back around. The big caveat here is you will need to stay within a DraftKings salary. So you can't just take all the best players. You do need to make sure you can afford each one of your picks. Thank you, David, for gifting me the first pick and what I believe will be the eventual winner of this tournament. I gave you a little bit of a scare when you said you were giving me the first pick before the show and said I might not take Sungjae, but that was a lie. I am taking Sungjae M with the first pick. Listen, he's priced up. He's the most expensive golfer in the field. He deserves to be. He is playing great golf. Is he the ideal course fit? Maybe not. He's a good enough course fit. He's the best golfer in the field, and that's what I am betting on. I think the only thing that might scare some people off of Sungjae this week is what his potential ownership might end up looking like. But I think if anything comes in on Sungjae under in the low 20s or under 20, I would be thrilled and happy to play him at 10-7. David, you got the second pick. Who are you looking to take first?
Yeah, well, thank you, Joel, for doing as I expected and taking Sungjae with the first pick, which is was a strategic draft decision from myself that I figured you would go with Sungjae, and there was another golfer who I really wanted, and so I thought I could place myself in the second round here and move myself up one spot when it comes back on the wrap round. So look, I think there's every reason to play Sungjae. He does really, really well in the comp courses. He's playing fantastic golf at the moment, and he's cleared the class in the field, right? So he's finished 6th, 9th, 24th, 2nd, 14th his last few appearances here, and he's probably playing some of the best golf that we've seen from him in the last several years. So I definitely think he is playable. The player that I really wanted to take and who I figured that I could get to in the second spot here was Brian Harman, who I'm going to take my first selection at 9,300. This golf course has some absolutely extreme correlation between TPC Sawgrass and Sedgefield. It's one of the most correlated courses that you will ever see. Davis Love III, Webb Simpson, Siwoo Kim, Sergio Garcia have all completed the double between the Players' Championship and winning the Wyndham Championship. In fact, 1/3 of the winners, get this, 1/3 of the winners at the Wyndham Championship have also won the Players' Championship. Then you've got guys like Adam Scott and Kevin Kisner who are just one shot off winning the Players as well. So it's extremely well correlated. Who finished second at the Players' Championship earlier this year behind Scotty Scheffler? It was one Brian Harman. He also won on this golf course as an amateur and junior tournaments in 2002 and 2003. Not many people will be onto that information. And then since it's been he's been on the PGA Tour, he's had a 3rd and a 6th here previously as well. Harbour Town, he's got a very good record, another Pete Dye design, 7th and 12th in his last 2 years there. And with the weather, I also think that that's a good factor for Brian Harman. We saw what he did at the Open Championship in the wind and the rain. And so I really think that actually that's another positive for him. So he's the standout selection for me at 9,300. He is way too cheap.
Boom, Brian Harman solidified by David. Interesting. I like it. Spence, would love to get your take on Harman, and who you going with your first pick?
This has started terribly. Yeah, Brian Harman's probably, I mean, first of all, Joel, I think you made the correct decision going Sungjae first. And one of the answers I was going to say, yeah, I know the ownership is what it is at this point, but if we're just looking pure win equity in my model, Sungjae M is pretty substantially the number one player for win equity. I tend to think that this is a great course fit for him. If you want to look at who the second player in projected win equity it is, it's the 102 that just went off the board in Brian Harman. So this is a really tough spot because I kind of written about this. I'm probably going to end up leaving a lot of money on the board, unfortunately, and this is not how I plan to start this build. I'm going to go with Christian Bezuidenhout at $8,700. I know the concerns of him traveling over and making the trip. I don't necessarily have that concern. Number one in my model in expected weighted strokes gain total, and that's a very important build for me in the way that I looked at it. Like, there's more upside in my model this week with Bezuidenhout than I normally get. A lot of that has to do with the recent turnaround this season with his iron play just being substantially better than it has been in years past. Not how I would have preferred to have started this. It doesn't mean Bezuidenhout wouldn't have been a pick of mine, but I would have gone Sungjae or Brian Harmon with one of the first two selections. And now I'm kind of going to be in the spot where I'll probably just take a different build and be a little bit flatter in the construction.
All right, there you have it. And the audience, quick reminder, you're up. You got two, so get those nominations and doubles in. But Christian Bezuidenhout at 8-7, he's priced up a bit, but he's playing great golf. I think maybe priced up is the accurate pricing for that pick. I like the way he's playing. He's someone I would be looking to roster this week. David, I'd love your feedback on Seabez before I lock the audience picks in.
Yeah, I mean, no issue. He's playing a very, very good game at the moment, very accurate golfer, obviously, and it really is a key finding the fairways here. It's interesting that from the fairway, the green and regulation percentage is 80%. So 4 and 5 times you're going to find the green if you find the fairway. If you find the rough here, it's 55%. It's a huge mark down on your ability to find the greens if you do find the rough. So Bezuidenhout obviously has a hot putter as well, and I think that he can keep pace with the scoring. And we've lost him. We'll go to the audience. Aaron Ryan, Siwoo Kim, Spencer's who they have selected. I would have liked Siwoo Kim back on the wraparound. Part of the reason why I moved myself up into second spot was in the hope of getting Siwoo Kim. Obviously a past champion here and a past winner of the Wyndham as well. And he just seems to be playing his best golf that we've seen in a very, very long time as of late, especially on approach. What's your take on him?
I think both of the picks are two very safe selections to be made at the end of the day. If inside of the safety rating of my model, Siwoo is the second safest player I have. Aaron Rai is sixth, but there are some top 5 grades, including being the number 1 projected total driver. So it feels very safe with two golfers that are going to probably carry between 20 to 25%. I don't necessarily have anything negative to say about either outside of the ownership discussion.
Sure, yeah, there is that factor. I mean, look, and one thing to factor in, right? Aaron Rai famously wears 2 gloves. So if there's going to be a lot of rain this week, he has 2 gloves to replace on a regular basis. So, I mean, the caddy's going to have like, 20, 30 gloves in the bag to make sure he's stocked up, to make sure he's got left and righties all the time ready to go for this tournament. But maybe that improves his grip. Who knows? Maybe that improves his grip on the club with all the rain that's going to be a factor.
I guess the one thing I will say for a negative mark about Aaron Rai, just because, I mean, there is one thing in my model if we're trying to find a reason to not play him. One of the things that I have noticed is that the winner of this tournament, and we're talking about victory here above anything else. So this is like the highest end mark that you can get. Every single person has carried a very similar trajectory in my model where they have either been an elite Bermuda putter, or the caveat would be with a Lucas Glover, they are a better than expected increase on Bermuda versus any other surface. So Glover, for example, outside of the top 130 in expected putting last year entering this event, climbs inside the top 60 for this specific green complex. Aaron Rai moves in the wrong direction. That was the one thing with me that kept me off of him in the outright market. I thought when he opened at 40-1, it was an interesting number to consider, but with putting being as important as it is in my model this week, that was the only caveat that kept me off of him.
Yeah, fair enough. Although we have seen an improvement on the putter recently with the switch of putting coach. There is
number 1 in the last 24 rounds in expected putting.
Wow.
So if he continues that trajectory, I mean, victory could be around the corner based off of that answer.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Welcome back, Joel. And Spence will roll into your next pick.
So I've given all these answers about needing to find the short grass off the tee, and I'm going to probably take one of the most erratic golfers who's not only not accurate, but he's also not long. I'm going to take Eric Cole. And here is the reason behind why I like Eric Cole this week. First of all, the ownership has started to trend up after what we've seen from him recently. So that is what it is. But it's been a very disappointing season for him. If you look at the data and the way that my model projects him, he's 4th for weighted strokes gained total, 7th when he's faced with the Donald Ross property. So those are high-end marks there. He's 17th for expected proximity. I know everybody hears that 17th place rake, and you're not going to think that that sounds overly encouraging, but I want everybody to just consider that is attached next to a 54th place expectation when you play elsewhere. And it also yields a 135th place GIR rank where it's 15th place here. So there is this perfect venue, perfect time, perfect opportunity situation that seems to be occurring for Cole right now in my model. And then if we want to look at some of the expected driving statistics, he jumps up to 43rd in multiple weighted categories of how I ran it this week. So he's going to be popular. I do think at the end of the day, this is a boom or bust commodity, to where I don't usually love the boom or bust commodities paying 15% plus in ownership, but I just think the ceiling is so much higher than what this price tag is. And with my build already getting crashed and burned to the ground with what you guys did with the first 2 picks, I'm just going to go off script at this point and kind of just play the players in my model that graded the best with everything considered.
Boom. Listen, Cole's on the rise. He's definitely someone I was looking at. And I think he's interesting because, you said it, like on paper, he might not be the perfect course fit. But I think he's one of those guys where you want to play the profile, the guy on the rise, the guy who might be someone who has some upside. Then, maybe that on paper, not the perfect course fit narrative will help to contain that ownership sum with the upside that you're looking for. So I like that pick. David, would love your take on the last few picks we saw, and who are you looking to add to Brian Harman?
Well, I love that Spencer's set the audience off claiming a stolen pick there on Eric Cole, who's obviously looking at the chat, guys. I mean, it's just typical Spencer looking at the chat, seeing who you guys are naming and just taking those names from you. So, look, I do see the fit for Cole. Obviously, he's only played here once. He finished 14th prior to a trip to Links Golf in Scotland. A lot of these golfers, right? Like Links Golf is so different, and sometimes you can just strike a line between the Open and the Scottish Open. Just say, do you know what? Like, I'm just going to write those off because it's such a different form of golf. But prior to that, he played very well at Detroit Golf Club, a very long golf course that I wouldn't think fits Eric Cole's game very well. Finished in the top 10, and then the same at the TPC Dare Run, which I do actually think is a very good correlated course. JT Poston ties those together nicely. So do share the concerns around the ownership. I'm seeing like 15%, which if he ends up at 15%, I won't be playing him at 7,700. That becomes the fade spot for me. But if his ownership, say, goes down to say between that 10 to 12%, I think he's in the frame of mind.
Boom. All right, David. Who are you putting with Brian Harman with your second pick?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with a golfer who actually had a very successful trip to Scotland, and that's Billy Horschel. So I kind of hoped on this wraparound that I'll be able to get either Billy Horschel or Siwoo Kim with my second selection. Obviously, second at the Open Championship, he played phenomenally well. He also played incredibly well in the final round. It's not like he threw away the victory. It's just Xander Schauffele just played the most incredible 9-hole sort of major championship golf you will see in quite some time. Ozzy has a fantastic record at the Wyndham. He's got a second, 6th, 11th, 27th, 4th in his last 5 starts here. He's got good correlated form at Harbour Town as well. He's got a 5th there previously. And I just like where his game's at. I think it's a really good course fit. He's going to find lots of fairways. And for me, again, someone who's just presenting as really good value, who's just ticking all the boxes on the correlated courses that we want.
Billy Horschel certainly looks good over there at the Open, form on the rise, has the upside to win the tournament. That's an interesting pick. Certainly fits your team narrative of BH initials, which I certainly can understand. So I got 2 here. A couple of the guys I was looking at were taken, but I'm pretty happy to be able to steal with these next 2 picks. First, I'm going to go with my guy, Akshay Bhatia, who all-around game has been excellent this year. And these are the types of fields we've seen him really excel in, where it's a little bit watered down. I think at 9,100, I feel like he was underpriced. And I feel like you're getting a really good bargain for someone who can go out and win this tournament. And I'm going to pair him with – I'm contemplating here because there's 2 guys I want. I'm just trying to think who is more likely to get back to me. I'm going to take Johnny Vegas. Again, we saw him go out and win the tournament just a couple weeks ago. The ball striking has been absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think that goes away. I think that ball striking, it comes back. You think you're going to see that. The question mark is the putting. Again, a neutral putter here. He doesn't even need to gain strokes. As long as he doesn't lose any, I think you get a really good result from him. He doesn't need to win this tournament at 8K. If I can get him in the top 10 or around there, that's good enough. So I just think he's striking the ball too well to be priced at 8K in this field. David, would love your feedback on those picks, and then love to see where you go with your third.
Yeah, I'm probably less high on Akshay Bhatia, just given he can be pretty volatile with the driver, which you've spoken to yourself. But I guess the other thing to note with him is he does have some very, very good form coming in and looks to be just one of those talented golfers who's just on the absolute rise. So yeah, look, he's got a lot of potential ahead of him. I just don't know if it's the right spot for me necessarily. Johnny Vegas probably holds more appeal. He finished third at the Players Championship back in 2019, as I mentioned, extremely correlated. He also finished seventh there back in 2012, so he has had some good records there. Won at the 3M Open. He's still just inside the top 70. He's 67th, so he does need to have another good week, and that does factor in with these FedEx Cup playoffs looming on the horizon for a lot of these guys. But my question with that then becomes, does Johnny Vegas's upside get depressed, right? Because he's 67th, like say he's like 21st or something entering Sunday, does he then just start to play like real safe just to make sure that he's still in the top 70, or does he like really shoot for the heavens and go for like a top 10? So there's all those sort of question marks where you're trying to get into people's headspaces, and it does get really difficult in that regard. So I'm gonna just kind of deferring from that, getting into headspaces comment, going to take a golfer, Victor Perez, who played extremely well at the Olympics, and you could kind of make two arguments here. You could say he's going to be absolutely exhausted after what he did in Paris in front of a passionate French crowd that was really fired up, and that he's going to be really emotionally drained following all of that. Or you could go the other route and say he's going to be completely inspired. He's going to realize that he's 71st on the FedEx Cup playoffs list and really needs to come out and play well, and he's going to come back inspired from his time over in France. What really got me with Victor Perez is the links, as I mentioned, to TPC Sawgrass. Obviously, he was fantastic last week, shot a -8 in that final round, but the links to the players is so strong with this golf course. Now, Victor Perez isn't the biggest name by any means in this field. Like, let's be honest, he's not. But he finished 9th earlier this year at the Players back in 2021, he finished 9th at the Players Championship, so it was extremely high result in a very high caliber field. Then back in 2020, in that golf tournament that wasn't, he was 3 under through the first round before it got cancelled with COVID. So he's only had 2 looks at the golf course, was looking very, very good in his first attempt there, and then a 9th in 2021 in a tournament that actually got completed. So I like all of those narratives, and I think at 7,200, based on what we saw from him at the Olympics, I think he comes in fired up and really shoots a good tournament for us.
I like the Victor Perez pick. I think for a value pick where he's really interesting is he has a lot of upside. There's a lot of guys in that range that might be safer, that might be of a higher likely to get, a top 30. But if you're looking for a guy in the low 7K range that can go up and get you a top 5, right? I think that's the type of value you get from Perez, because we've seen him do that. And he has, those runs that he puts together. So if I'm playing in a GPP and looking for that value plays, Perez is the type of golfer, or profile golfer, that I'd be looking for. Spence, would love your take on the last round, and then you got your third pick.
Yeah, I mean, Perez was one of the bright spots of my team last week. If it wasn't for Straka not being able to make a putt and everything else going south in some of those directions, and Rahm not winning the golf tournament, I think Perez was a very deserving, and it would have been a great story if he could have gotten the bronze medal there, or even better than that. But I think in general, and it's kind of the same answer that I've given for Bezuidenhout, this narrative for me of players traveling has been so overblown. I know Perez exerted a ton of energy here, but it's a case-by-case position. Like, I don't want anybody to be removed from somebody's consideration just for that reason. Now, if you want to give a reason that there's a lot of golf that's been played, there's the travel and the statistical form looks bad, we can have that discussion. But I don't want to remove somebody just for the answer of, oh, he exerted a lot of energy in France and now is playing a golf tournament. So I think it makes a lot of sense if you want to say something there, David.
Yeah, just really quickly. I mean, like with those guys, they've been there for the Scottish Open, the Open Championship, the Olympics. Like, so really in terms of the travel factor, like if they played in the 3M Open, come over the Olympics, then got back to the States, I'm more concerned about that situation than guys who have been in Europe for kind of a month and then they're just taking one trip back as well.
Yeah.
All right. There you have it. Spence. All right. I need some help. I'm frozen here. Can you hear me?
You're good.
Yeah, I'll take us here. This is another. I mean, if you look at my start of the build, Bezuidenhout, Cole, those are 2 names that I was planning to potentially put on in some capacity. now all of a sudden we're in this range to where I don't necessarily have a lot of the options left. All the top end values gone for me. I have a board where there's a lot safer of targets than the upside candidates. And I see a lot of ownership around names that I was generally trying to avoid in a lot of these sections. So not the build that I was planning to start with, but I'm going to take Cameron Davis at 8,900. One of the top 10 safest players in my model. He carries, I would have taken Billy Horschel for the record if David didn't make that selection. So it's just been like swipe after swipe from David's build just over and over again. But Davis is number one in my model at Donald Ross Properties. We've talked numerous times on this show about his ability to club down and provide better results. I think there's a reason why he's provided the results he has at this tournament, and he's trending. Obviously, the victory at the Rocket Mortgage, but 2 additional top 26 finishes since then. So I'm going to bet on the form. I'm going to play the safety. And as I said, this is a much safer, different build than I normally take, and maybe that's a good thing this week.
David is another guy that tends to pop in these softer events with the watered down field. He certainly has the upside. 8,900, there's certainly a world where taking the approach Spence is taking here, where you're going a little bit more balanced, maybe avoiding that top tier, but you can really load up on these high upside, high 7, high 8K range guys. Certainly will have some credence this week. Audience, you're on the clock. We need 2. It looks like there might be one in, but we'll still need that second. While we wait, love to get your feedback on the Davis pick. David.
Yeah, look, I mean, Cam Davis has this weird ability to perform really well at these club down spots. It's almost like when you start taking the driver out of his hand, he actually starts performing a lot better. So we're seeing that across time, including at another Pete Dye design at Harbortown. Obviously, Pete Dye's had some influence on the Donald Ross design here at Sedgefield as well. So, and he's playing good golf, and put it down to his hypnotherapy that he's introduced to his routine, or whatever you want to do. If that's giving him a mental edge where he feels that he's in a better space and he's able to come out and compete, it's obviously working. By the way, Detroit Golf Club, where he's won twice, both of his PGA Tour victories, is also a Donald Ross design.
Boom. There you have it. Audience, it looks like the picks are in. I am a little bit upset. That is definitely a steal for me. I love Andrew Novak, and you know that because I take him almost every week. I don't understand why they don't raise his price. He certainly performed better than the price tag they're putting on him. I will be overweight on Andrew Novak this week again. I thought he was going to get back to me. Otherwise, I would have taken it with my last pick. But I think that's an absolutely great pick. He's probably my favorite play in that low 7K range. And we're also going to lock in for the second selection with the audience, Thomas Dietrich, who's also playing really well. Another good value pick. I think the audience's roster is off to a really good start. Spence, would love to get your take on what the audience has done, and then you're up with your 4th pick.
I legitimately don't know what's going on right now. I'm going to have $7,000 left over. I should have taken Thomas Dietrich apparently instead of Cameron Davis. I was going to go back to back with those two. I like both picks that were made for the reasons that you just talked about with Novak. I think Dietrich is one of the safer plays on the board inside of my model. So I guess I'm going to go down the board here with the selection. I talked about this on my Action Network show, and this is a similar answer to the Eric Cole discussion that I had of an inaccurate golfer who's also not long off the tee. But I want everybody to at least hear these statistics, and we can go of why a Bermuda surface might be the best geared for him to find high-end success. So I looked at the last 26 rounds that this golfer had played since it was the last 26 rounds for him were non-Bermuda. Then just to at least just keep the same blueprint in place, I looked at the last 26 rounds that this player had played on Bermuda. That's going to date it back to the very end stretch of 2023. I don't want to provide data and have you think that that's from like 3 months ago. We're dating this back to the end of last year, but look at Ben Griffin here. He has 25.2 strokes gained putting on Bermuda during those 26 rounds, negative 3.75 during that recent cold stretch on non-Bermuda opportunities. I think that when you put him on a Bermuda course, you get a much different golfer in Griffin. And I thought this price tag was far too cheap at what we're getting here in the lower $7,000 section.
Boom. And I think it's a good point Spence is making in that there's some interesting value here in the sense that this is a watered down event. And so some of these guys are mispriced. And I think there are some guys down here in these lower tiers like Ben Griffin, like Andrew Novak, that, could have been priced in the 8K range. And I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. And so that's where you can get kind of sneaky in finding your value and making these more balanced builds. David, would love your feedback on the last few picks, and then you're up with your fourth.
Yeah, look, I'll endorse the Ben Griffin play from Spence. I think that's really sharp. He finished fourth here in his first look at Sedgefield. That was always eye-catching to me when a golfer can come out in their very first appearance at a golf course and perform really well and present a high-end finish. And then fifth at the John Deere Classic recently as well, which TPC Deere run is pretty correlated to what you expect at Sedgefield. Obviously wanting high-end finishes at a golf course where driving accuracy is really important, and then low scoring as well.
All right, there you have it. You got about 7,700 per pick left. Where are you going with your fourth pick?
Yeah, so kind of looking at what you've got left, Joel, I'm going to go and take Keegan Bradley. He is a good performer at the Players. He's got a 7th, 16th, and 5th in the last few renditions around TPC Sawgrass. Obviously, that's highly correlated. And he just pops really well in terms of the driving accuracy acumen that we're looking at over the last 3 months. We're seeing a big improvement in his driving accuracy. He ranked 17th in this field over the last 3 months. And then in terms of strokes gained approach, he's ranked 13th over the last 6 months in this field. So kind of presents that all-round game that I'm really looking at. 43rd at the moment in the FedEx Cup playoffs, so currently in the mix of the BMW Championship. Being an upcoming Ryder Cup captain, obviously he wants to be putting some good performances out there at the moment and really showing that selection was warranted. So I like him at the value, and I think he's a good selection for a nice safety pick this week.
All right, Keegan Bradley, it is. I got two here. I'm going to start by taking Mav McNeely, who, again, I don't necessarily look at Mav as the perfect course fit, but I think at 8,100, I think he possesses a lot of upside. And Mav is one of those guys that in the model is probably never going to show as like the highest upside player. But the reason for that is Mav has a short game and putting game that can go nuclear. And when he does that, right, he can just, lap the field. He gets his really great results. I think this is a field that he has really high potential in. At 8,100, I think he's underpriced. And I think it's a good way to kind of balance out a squad like I'm drafting with a guy like him with that upside. And then for my second pick here, I'm going to take Mac Meisner, who we mentioned on the show a few times recently. You might look at his most recent result and say, question it a little bit, right? At the 3M Open, he shot a 74 on Sunday. Other than that, he was in really good shape. He ended up with T59. But if you look before that, he was on an absolute tear. Now, keeping in mind, he was on a tear playing in watered down events, right? The Barracuda Championship, even the John Deere wasn't the strongest field. But that's what this is. And when he's playing in these events, he tends to show up. And he does do well with these low-scoring events, right, where you can go 17 under, 19 under. Those are those events where he's shown up. That's another one where I think it'll be similar scoring. I think he's in really good form right now this year. And it hasn't just been the last month or two. If you look even back to earlier in the season, all the way back to, April, he got 10th at the Valero. In March, he was T26, T23 at the Valspar in Puerto Rico. So this has been an all-year thing. This isn't just a flash in the pan right now. Even at the Charles Schwab, he was T5. At Myrtle Beach, he was T13. He's playing really good. And at 7,100, there's plenty of upside. I actually put Mac in a similar category as Victor Perez when I said, there might be some guys that are safer, but if you're looking to get a guy with upside in a GPP, those are the types of guys that can get you that top 10 finishes. So I kind of followed your flow there from the first round with the matching initials in my first two picks. So there you go. I don't know how that happens, but here we are. David, would love your feedback on McNeely and Meisner, and then you're up with your fifth pick.
Yeah, and look, I actually considered continuing the trend just for the sake of good television and taking Bo Hosler to keep the BH trend going, who's also in the field, was an option. But yeah, look, I don't like Bo Hosler for the tournament, so I couldn't bring myself to do it. And then I could have done Hayden Buckley as well. I found if you inverted the initials, you could do HB instead of BH. Yeah, look, I think McNeely's a really interesting spot because his ownership is a little bit depressed, and we've seen that he has the upside. He's not going to pop in models because he doesn't necessarily have the right course fit, but there's always a name or two who manage to find their way around, and he does look to be playing improved golf this year, so I think that's a really interesting leverage spot. Meisner I'm probably less infused by, but then McNeely, but look, he has displayed really, really good acumen in some of those lower field events that he said recently, and his game does tend to be trending in the right direction. So look, maybe he can come out and surprise me with a high end finish. I'm going to go and find some value myself at the moment. I'm going to dive right down to the middle of the 6K range. I'm going to take Zach Blair at 6,400, who looks wildly mispriced for the standard that he's been playing. Bear in mind with Zach Blair, right? This is a golfer who suffered an injury and had surgery, was out for a year and a half, and he was playing at a very high level previously. That included at Wildlife Country Club, where he played very well, another kind of fiddly course where there's lots of wedges, lots of mid-irons, lots of driving accuracy required, performed really, really well on those golf courses, and finished second at TPC River Highlands behind Keegan Bradley, my previous selection, another golf course that demands a lot of driving actually in order to be successful. We've also seen him show up at some weird spots, like it was 26 at the US Open, which was a very, very impressive finish for him down at Pinehurst, and then 46 at the John Deere Classic, nothing to sneeze about either. So look, I think at 6,400, he's too cheap. If we look at the last 30 days, he is 8th in this field for driving accuracy and 23rd for approach. He's gained on approach in 5 of his last 7 starts, and that's included 2 starts where he was basically at field average, with the only 2 starts he wasn't gaining on approach. Now, that's usually not Zach Blair's strongest suit to his game, so really pleasing to see him moving up the rankings in that regard over the last 30 days.
Boom, Zach Blair, certainly some strong value. The first pick off the board in the 6K range. Spence, I would love your take on the last few picks, and then you're up with your 5th.
I am probably a little bit different from David, where I like the Meisner pick from you, Joel. I thought he was an intriguing target. There's going to be ownership around him, but there were high-end marks and safety totals like all built together in my models. So I thought he was an interesting name. He was somebody that I was keeping in mind to potentially put into a build. I keep talking about this lineup of mine not necessarily being exactly where I wanted to go. And really the flip that I've done is I'm just running it from a safety portion at this point. Like I've lost a lot of the upside candidates that I wanted. And with this being a volatile event with all the weather that's coming into play, I'm trying to find the golfers that graded a little bit safer. Now, Ben Griffin would probably be the one name of that group that would be worse than the rest of them. Like even Eric Cole graded pretty safe for me, all things being considered. But I'm going to go to the only other name that I have inside of my top 10 for safety. Wasn't planning to do this when the show started. I'm going to take Cameron Young.
Cameron Young, interesting. Listen, he certainly has upside. I like the pick. He wasn't on my radar, but now that I think through it, I think it's certainly a unique way to build.
I also wanted to have, like you guys have all these cool trends that are going on. I needed to have 2 Camerons. Like we'll build this in a different way.
That's fair. You got to get on the trend train. That's how you build a truly balanced lineup. Audience, you got 2 here. So let's get those nominations in. We got to lock those picks in. While we wait to lock in the audience too, David, any interest in Cameron Young this week?
Yeah, look, strokes gained name narrative is obviously is going to be the theme of the week. I like the double Cameron play there. Look, Cameron Young, right? Everyone's got this narrative like the guy can't win, he's going to choke, etc. I agree with all that. The thing is, as a result of that, you're going to get depressed ownership. Like people just do not want to play Cameron Young because he has burned people so many times in the past. If this is going to be a really windy tournament, look at the PGA Championship 2022 and what he did at the Southern Hills. It was an extremely windy tournament. There was a massive weather wave that came in. He had a very high-end finish. He probably actually should have won the tournament. He was within our selections that week, so that's why I remember it so vividly, because he should have probably gone out and won it. Instead, he handed it to Justin Thomas. So he's played very well in windy conditions before. Do you need him to go out and win necessarily? No. Like, if he finishes top 5, top 10, which he is very, very capable of doing, you can still get a return on your investment at 9,700. So another really interesting leverage option that both of you guys have identified.
All right. I love it. Audience, great job locking those picks in. So the first pick is going to be Luke Clanton, who's the amateur we've mentioned a few times on this show. He has gotten really hot over the summer, over the last few weeks. Missed the Cut 3 Open. Other than that, has played some really good golf. And they will also be locking in Ben Coles at 6,900. Spence, we'd love to get your feedback on the audience. 2 picks here, and then you're up with your last.
I'm conflicted on Luke Clanton. My model continues to really like him. I worry that he loses the driver here. I worry that some of the around the green and putting stuff is not necessarily the best fit. The statistical form in my model still likes him. Like, I don't know what to do with him. I saw Ben Silverman come up multiple times in the chat. I really like Ben Silverman this week. I'm kind of in this spot right now where I'm trying to figure out if I want to end this with Ben Silverman, Brendan Todd, maybe Denny McCarthy. I'd probably rather just leave money on the table, though, because I think all 3 are very similar to one another. I'm going to go a little bit different than my model. My model technically says I should take Ben Silverman, 7 top 40 finishes in his last 8 tournaments. I'm going to instead go with Brendan Todd and go with the course history that we've gotten from him.
Brendan Todd, I looked at him as well. The course history is there. He seems to be a really good course fit. The only real question you have around Todd is his current form, but he just kind of pops in some of these tournaments, especially the courses he likes. So it's a chance you have to take.
I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, and we could speculate on it. He is 70th entering this tournament in the FedEx Cup standings, so he is right on the bubble one way or another. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't want to come on this show and pretend like I know that Brendan Todd is going to perform for that reason. If anything, it probably likely goes the other way, but I think this is a really nice course fit for him where he gets to end his season at a tournament that has historically been very good for him.
I think you have to lean on that. It's a tournament that's been good for him, that fits his game. In this field, I think he certainly has upside. So I like that pick. David, would love your feedback on the last few picks, and then how are you rounding out your squad?
I mean, just a welcome to the chat as well to see Najad, the GOAT of the first round leader and member of the Win Daily team. Make sure that you check out the discount code down below, because the ROI in the last 7 weeks, in case you haven't noticed, is like plus 120%. So for $7 a week, you're not doing too badly. But I love this all-time comment from Sia with Team Cam could also go Campillo, Cam Champ, Campos, and Camilo Villegas. What a lineup that would be. Probably leaving the $7,000 on the table that Spence threatened to do early in the show if you drafted all of those guys on the same team. Yeah, look, Brendan Todd, really good course fit. I do think with the 70th place in the FedEx Cup, he needs to have a week this week. Doesn't mean he needs to go and finish top 20, but I think that he's certainly going to be in the frame of mind that he needs to come out and perform, right? And he needs to come out and find a cut, which I definitely think he can do. At 7,000, I think that he can deliver you some value on the basis of that. I'm going to go and take a little bit of a risk on Harris English here. For the record, I would have taken Thomas Dietrich if he had been on the board. Team audience, congrats on that one. I do think Dietrich has really good safety, kind of similar to Cam Young. Nobody wants to play him because he's not going to win you a tournament, because he just has never won a tournament and continues to fail to do so, but he's got a lot of safety. Harris English, obviously very, very good performer in some of the high-end spots. Now, we look at what he's done in the majors this year: 41st at the US Open, 50th at the Open Championship in a very windy, rainy edition, 18th at the PGA Championship, 22nd at the Masters. So 4 May cuts in all of the majors. Also at the Players, which I mentioned is extremely correlated. He finished 19th earlier this year. We are relying on a bit of turnaround on his approach metrics, obviously, but he's got some good correlated form at like Harbour Town. He's had an 8th Wyndham Championship here. He's had a 10th previously as well. And I do think that his game fits in terms of all-round driving capacity. He's not overly short of the tee, not the longest hitter, but he's not overly short, but he's still going to find you fairways. And then in his around the green metrics, he really shines through in this field. Last 6 months, he's 11th for around the green, 23rd for putting as well. So he's playing good enough for me to want to take him at the price.
Harris English, he hasn't been mentioned too much on this show more recently, but I'm with you. I think he has the upside. I like his game at 8K. I think he's a really interesting selection there to round out your squad. All right, to round out my squad with my final pick, I am settled on Matty Schmid, who showed up at the 3M Open, gave you a really good result. I think he's just playing some good golf right now. I think long-term data would say it might not be the best course fit, but middle of the pack, T26 at the Olympics, really just had one poor round, was good at the 3M Open. I think this could be another week where he could, have a good week at 7K and show some upside. I like the way he's hitting his driver. The ball striking right now is heading in the right direction. That's a wrap for the draft this week. As Sia has demanded in the trap, we appreciate you, Sia, as always. Thanks for stopping in. Smash that like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. Let us know which team you think is going to win. We will track it and come back next week to crown a champion. Before we get you all out of here tonight, we will be providing some first round leaders or maybe just general bets we like to get us out. David, we'll start with you in the first round leader market. Who are you looking at here?
I'm going to segue this segment with your last selection there, Joel, at Matty Schmid, who's at 7,000, because one of my first round leader selections is also at 7,000. I'm going to propose a bet for you. You can name the price. Matty Schmid versus CT Pan, who finishes higher. If both miss the cut, then no blood is drawn. I will take whatever money that you want on that one.
So what's the bet?
CT Pan or Matty Schmid, who has the highest finish.
What does the winner get?
You name
you
it.
get to call. That's the ultimate wager, Joel. Like, you get to make the number.
You can steal my next draft pick, whatever you wish.
I see. The thing is, I like CD Pan too, so I don't really I'm not targeting CD Pan. I don't love this bet. I'll do it for fun because you called me out and we can have some fun, something to follow. But I don't want to put a major dollar amount on it, so we'll call it a pizza bet.
Pizza bet. With it. Yeah, check it out there. So yeah, CT Pan, I'm gonna get him for first round leader at 90-1. I am also going to make a bold prediction with the weather. I'm going to say that there's no play whatsoever on Thursday, and Friday morning looks very, very windy. And so Thursday PM, which I think is going to become Friday PM, I think is going to be the best round tee times to be on for the first round leader. So that's my logic here. CT Pan playing very, very good golf. He's won Harbour Town Pete Dye Design. He's had a second at the Wyndham Championship previously. He was second recently at the John Deere Classic. Played very well at the Olympics. He was bronze medalist at Tokyo, and he was 18th at Le Golf National, another course that demands a lot of driving accuracy. So I like him to be first round leader at 90-1. Got to take my boy Brian Harman 50-1 at the moment in first round leader markets. His win price has narrowed drastically. He's in that right weather wave. If we get that weather right in terms of Thursday afternoon being Friday afternoon, 50-1 seems extremely generous on Brian Harman to be your first round leader. Billy Horschel and Siwoo Kim, my last two to round it out, both at 40-1.
Boom. I love it. Spence, how about you? Do you have any first round leaders or matchup plays you like this week?
I think that's an interesting take that David just brought up in the first round leader market. He very well may end up being correct on that. And I had all morning times. I'm going to add Bezadenhout and Harman. You can get Harman at 55-1 if you shop around. Bezadenhout is 60. I went with Eric Cole at 80. I went with Ben Griffin at 75. Those are the two morning guys that I've talked about a lot on this show. Mac Meisner, 100. And I actually thought the Sungjae number at 35-1, over double of where he was pre-tournament, was a really interesting price on Sungjae.
Boom. I love it. I love it. All right. I just got a couple for you, and then we'll get us out of here. I'm going to start with Matt McNeely at 60-1. I'm with you, Spence, and Mac Meisner at 100-1. I think that's too big of a number there. But my favorite first-round leader play is going to be Andrew Novak at 80-1. I think that's a really big number. And the least of the lowest odds, but I think someone who can really show up, especially in the first round. The audience took him, Siwoo Kim. He likes this course. He's playing well this year. I like Siwoo as a first round, one round to kind of have a big run at it. 40-1, I think you're getting pretty good odds for a guy who's at the top of the field.
I mean, note that last week, Joel and I both cheered Hideki Matsuyama as first round leader, who hit at 33-1, and we've both got Siwoo Kim on our first round leader markets this week. Coincidence? I think not.
Maybe we do it again. And it's a similar range, maybe even a little better odds. I think we run it back. Let's get another W. This time we put all of our money on it, every penny. Take out a mortgage, take out a loan, all of it on a first round leader. Don't actually do that. It's a joke. We're having fun, maybe a couple dollars. But if you put it all and he wins, and it's a good idea, good luck this week. Did I forget anything?
Well, let's do something a little bit different here than we normally do. We have a couple minutes before we can get out of here. Just as a random thing, I think we've talked a lot about plays, maybe not as much as we normally do. What is your favorite play? And we can just go across the line. The one favorite play that every single person other than yourself took.
I've already said it multiple times on this show, so mine's obvious. Andrew Novak. I love Andrew Novak. He doesn't carry even the ownership that I think he should be carrying at this price. At 7,100, I think they've criminally underpriced him. He's playing too good at golf. Andrew Novak all day.
I do like Thomas Dietrich from the audience. I think that he gives you really good safety. I do think he does eventually go out and win a tournament, right? Like he is too talented a golfer not to. He will eventually get over that hump. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but I think that his safety numbers on a golf course that should really suit. He's playing some very good golf lately. And because of that narrative of like Thomas Dietrich has burned me so many times in the past, I don't want to put him in my lineup. You get depressed ownership. Like he shouldn't be at 10, 11% ownership for me. He should be much higher given the price where he is.
I guess for me, I mean, like the obvious answer is Harman because it threw my whole draft into a loop. But if it wasn't Harman, because that's the easy route to go here, I'm going to join David with Thomas Dietrich. That was the second most irritated that I was with the selection. I really wanted to find a way to put Dietrich onto this build.
Yeah, I would say Dietrich's kind of shown something more recently. I think he's playing better than we've even seen in the past. That putter can get really hot, and those are the kind of things you got to look for. Like some of these guys just are never going to gain that many strokes putting. With his upside with the putter, he doesn't need to light the world on fire with the ball striking. Just positive ball striking with that putter upside can yield some really big results, which we've seen more recently from him. Good question, Spence. Anything else before we get us out of here?
What a bold prediction from Sia. I'll shout Sia 20 pineapple pizzas if Cam Davis and Billy Horschel in a playoff and Cam Davis wins. I'll put that on the record right now. So 20, Sia, if this happens, 20 pineapple pizzas coming direct to you, along with lots of sports.
Is